Hi, Peter Jones, Chartered Surveyor, author and property investor, and in this short series of videos we're thinking about using SPVs, limited companies, and how we can obtain finance for our limited companies. So let's deal with that now. Let's think about finance. Now let's think about what an SPV is from the bank's point of view. From the bank's point of view, and most of the time we're going to be thinking about SPVs in terms of perhaps buying buy-to-let properties. An SPV from the bank's point of view is going to be a limited company which you create solely for the purposes of owning the buy-to-let properties that you buy. It's as simple as that. So sometimes I get asked the question, Peter, what's an SPV? How do I set it up? What do I need to do for the bank? Well, an SPV is simply a limited company. Or it could be, depending upon your circumstances, that you want to hold your properties in an LLP or a partnership or some other form of entity. But most of us, because of Section 24, and for convenience sake, and for tax purposes, is probably going to be a limited company. Big subject, I could probably talk about that for about 3 hours. But for most of us, it's going to be a limited company. So from the bank's point of view, what do they want to see? They want to see a limited company which has been set up specifically for the purpose of buying the properties. What they don't want to see is an existing company that's already trading. So it may be, for example, that you're an IT consultant, and it may be that your IT consultancy runs through a limited company that you set up, and there may be good reasons why you set up a limited company and that your IT business runs through that. If you go to the bank and say, look, I've already got a limited company and it's already trading and it's already got some money in the limited company bank account, isn't that a good thing? The bank are usually going to say, no, that's not a good thing, that's actually a bad thing. We don't want to lend to a company which is already existing and trading. We want to lend to a company that's brand new. And that's what they mean by the SPV. It's a special purpose vehicle. The special purpose is the buying and holding of your properties. They want to keep the two separate. Now why is that? Because they don't know what's going to happen to your IT business, for example. They don't know how many debtors you've got. They don't know whether your clients are paying on time. They don't know whether you, well, they will be able to do a check, but maybe you owe money through that business. Maybe there's other liabilities which are attached to that business. So they want to keep it nice and clean. Why? Because at the end of the day, ultimately, all a bank is ever concerned about is A, that you pay the interest on the loan, and B, that if you ever get into financial trouble, that they can repossess. And so they want to keep it nice and clean and tidy, so that if they have to take the property off you, that's going to be an easy job for them. If the properties are all intertwined with your IT business, it makes it that much more tricky for them. So setting up a limited company is what the bank will want you to do. Now, the big question which I often get is, well, Peter, if the company hasn't been trading, because I haven't bought any properties yet, will they lend me any money? Presumably they won't lend me any money because I can't show them 3 years accounts, I can't show them that there's any money in the bank account. It doesn't matter, because what will happen is that the bank will lend to the limited company, our SPV. They will lend to that on the basis of you. They'll look at you, they'll get your SA 302s or the equivalent nowadays. They'll get your bank statements, they'll look at your income. They'll look at whether you own a home, they'll look at what your income actually is. Most of them will want you to have an income of over $25,000 a year, for example. And that is what they will be judging as to whether they should be lending to you. Now, by the way, as a bit of a tangent, if you don't own $25,000 a year, and if you don't own your own home, there are ways and means of actually getting around that, because you can make a joint application. You could find a JV partner who could make a joint application on a mortgage with you, and then you could set up an SPV and you could split the shares 50-50 or whatever you agree with your joint venture partner. If you do meet the criteria of the bank, then you don't need to do that. You can set up your own limited company, your SPV, and you can own properties in your own name. Another question which I often get about this is, but Peter, is it hard to get finance for a limited company? Now, I don't know why everybody seems to assume that it is. And I hear people talking about this who purport to know about this, who say, yeah, it's a bit harder, blah, blah, blah. I've been buying properties into my limited company for the last 20 years, and it has never been a problem. There are plenty of lenders out there who will lend to limited companies. Now, just to put this into perspective, I did a little bit of research using Dr. Google this morning. Not very scientific, but it gives us a rough idea of what's going on. And as I speak, roughly about a third of all buy-to-let lenders will lend to limited companies, and the number is growing. Just this morning I wrote down some names I thought just off the top of my head. Now I'm not a broker, so I don't know this stuff. This is just me as an ignorant layperson, just from sort of reading and keeping my eyes open. But I came up with a list of half a dozen lenders straight off without even having to think about it. I came up with Paragon, I came up with Shawbrook and Oldmore, I came up with Precise, I came up with Fleet Mortgages, I came up with Kent Reliance, and there's plenty of others. But the thing which is really exciting is that November 2017, the Mortgage Works, who are probably the biggest buy-to-let lender in the UK, decided that they're going to lend to limited companies. And you can be sure that if they've decided to lend to limited companies, their peers and rivals will look at them and think, well, we're missing a trick here. We need to be lending to limited companies. So at the moment, about a third, more than a third probably, of all lenders are lending to limited companies, and that is only going to increase as time goes by. Now, to put that into perspective, I also printed off a list of how many mortgages are actually offered by all of those lenders. So thanks to the Love Money website, I've printed out their chart here. This was prepared in May 2017. Things have moved on substantially since then, but even back in May 2017, they were able to produce these statistics. And what they say is that 5 years ago, in other words around about 2012, just after the credit crunch, there were 30 products for limited companies. Not that great, but that was 5 years ago, just after the credit crunch. 6 months ago, which by their timings, because this was prepared in May 2017, would have been the beginning of 2017, 201 products, quite a jump from 30 to 201 mortgage products aimed at limited companies. 6 months later, May 2017, 313 mortgage products for limited companies. That's a jump of 100 in 6 months. That was back then. I would guess that the trend is still growing. We're probably up to 400 or 500 products now aimed at limited companies. So when I hear people say it's hard to get mortgages for limited companies, my conclusion is you're not using the right broker. A good broker will know where to take you in order to get finance for a limited company, what we could call an SPV. Another objection I sometimes hear is, but Peter, aren't the rates more expensive? Well, marginally, but all these things are changing. And as more and more lenders come into the market for limited companies, what's going to happen? There's going to be competition and the rates are going to narrow, but the rates are not much higher than for a normal individual who's taking out a buy-to-let in their own name. And when you think about it, because of the tax advantages anyway, whatever you lose on paying extra interest, you're going to gain back on tax anyway, probably. Sit down and do the figures, see if I'm right. So I don't really see that it matters. The whole point is, what's your goal? What's your vision? Do you want to buy 50 properties over the next couple of years? If you do, then just take out the higher rates for the limited company and crack on with it. Stop worrying about it, just get on with it. It doesn't make any difference, does it? It just needs to be done. It's just a cost of doing business, but it's probably not as expensive as you think. So anyway, I hope you found that helpful and useful. Thinking about SPVs, thinking about why we might want an SPV, thinking about how we might get bank finance for our limited company. By the way, one last question just to cover off. How do you set up a limited company? Well, you could go online, you could set up a limited company online, 15, 20 quid. Not a hard thing to do. I've just set one up for a JV, which I'm doing. I didn't do it myself, my accountant did it. He charged me 150 quid. Didn't take them very long. Easily done. So don't imagine this is all harder than it is. It's not that hard. So anyway, until next time, here's to successful property investing.